Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, the moment you felt you could start over new was the same that you realized the stories were true. You opened your eyes and the world you could see wasn't dim, it was brighter. You'd have to agree. Oh, now your fears are gone. They were buried with the dawn. And oh, now you feel alive for the very first time. Oh, now your fears are gone. They were buried with the dawn. And oh, now you feel alive for the first time. You're not hold me yet, not hold me yet. No, you're not home yet. No, not home, but you finally found the way.
Today we are going to talk about some helpful tips for brides that I have learned in my time as a wedding planner, being a bride, etc. This is specifically for Midwest weddings. And the reason that I say this is Midwest 2022-2023 brides have a way different budget book options than East and West Coast brides and even Southern brides. So, yeah, that's why I specifically say that my information is tailored to the Midwest. Sorry about my coloring. I don't know what the heck is going on. But let's get into it. So, tip number one, and kind of like the first thing that I've learned about, once you get engaged, don't worry about jumping into planning right away, depending upon how long your engagement's going to be. If you don't know, but you don't care, and it's probably going to be a long time, don't worry about it right away. Unless you're trying to get into a specific venue that's booked out for like a while, which I honestly, even for the more expensive venues that I have worked with, I have not encountered the need to wait multiple years on a venue's wait list unless you're looking for a specific date. Sometimes a specific month will push you out for a year, but for the most part, it's just the specific date. That being said, most popular dates, again, in the Midwest, are kind of June and September into October. The early October is more popular than the late October. It's easier to get a late October wedding date for most venues. August is kind of going to be your prime, like, busy time slot to get a wedding for that same year. So if you're looking to book something during like wedding season, but you're looking for less busy, potentially cheaper dates, you're wanting to look in the August range. As any bride that has looked into venues probably knows, your cheaper dates are going to be Thursday, Sunday, and Friday. Thursday and Sunday are your first cheapest dates, then Friday, and then Saturday is the most expensive, with full weekends or 2 days being the most expensive. So that being said, there are a lot of alternative options. There are a lot of things in terms of venuing. My biggest thing that I have brides talk to me about or say that, really wrecked their budget is their venue. Wedding venues are the biggest expense, hands down, second only to catering. Third in that line is your photography. In that order, it's going to be the most expensive, basically no matter where you live. Depending upon what tier of bride you are, and the only reason I say that is because most brides do classify themselves this way, I have found, is that whether you're a luxury bride, you're looking more like a step up, but not like cheap or anything, the mid-range bride, or, a budget bride is kind of what they refer to it as. Your wedding dress can be up there. Lots and lots of times it definitely doesn't have to be. There's lots of tips for how to do it a little cheaper, and tons of ways for you to, save money. So venues and keeping dates cheap and things like that, obviously picking a day that is cheaper. So a Thursday, a Sunday, or a Friday are going to be your cheaper dates, whether you're looking at for some people Thursday isn't really possible and Sunday doesn't really work, especially with certain religions. You cannot get married on a Sunday after a certain like time frame. So Friday is really that sweet spot where yes, you're probably not going to be able to leave stuff overnight to pick up again in the morning, which is usually the benefit of having a Saturday wedding. Is lots of venues will be like, as long as nothing's booked, come back in the morning and get your stuff. Um, but the trade-off to that is very, very frequently with venues, you have to pay for your Friday rehearsal to have it at that venue or to be able to get in to decorate. And many, many times with venues, if you have a Friday wedding, setting up to decorate, you can get in on Thursday, typically for cheap or free. A word of warning, this is not all venues and this is not everywhere, but it is a good rule of thumb. It is a good set of questions to ask your venue. So, you book for a Saturday and you only have the one day booked and you know what the hours for the venue are. A great question to ask either after you've booked, if you know you want to go with that venue no matter what, you're just looking for a plan, is to say, hey, if you don't have anyone coming in and booking for Sunday, is there the opportunity for me to come back and pick up my things Sunday morning by like 10 a.m. or something to that effect? Is there an opportunity for me to pick it up that morning? Sometimes they'll flat out say no. Sometimes they'll say, if there's nothing booked, we can't promise it. We can't let you know till the week of the wedding. Those are some typical responses. But very, very frequently, venues will say, yeah, as long as nothing's booked there by a month before your date to a week, somewhere in that time frame, you will be able to leave things here and then pick it up in the morning. Or again, vice versa, especially if it's a Friday, but sometimes on Saturday too. Can I come in and decorate the night before if nothing's booked at the venue? Yes, as long as, nothing has been booked, blah, blah, blah. Again, sometimes you do get you have to buy a dinner, you have to do this or whatever because we have to have staff there. Very frequently that is the concern if there is one. But if that isn't the concern, very, very frequently you can do it for inexpensive or free. It's just something you have to talk to your venue about. So that is a huge cost saver for a lot of brides. It's also a very big time saver because a lot of people don't know who's going to set up for them or they want to be involved in their setup. As a planner and coordinator, it is my number one thing that I get contracted for is to do the things that the bride wishes she could do herself but cannot be there to do and doesn't have anyone that either she wants to do it or trusts to do it. Simply because the venue will not allow the flexibility of having extra days unless you're paying a lot more, which is just not doable for 90% of brides. Another tip in terms of venues, don't let them bully you into booking out for multiple years. So if your heart is set on a certain date or a certain month or a certain day within a month, so it has to be a Saturday in September, you're probably going to have to book out. But if you're fairly flexible, especially on your day of the week, do not let them bully you into, well, our Saturday package is really the best package. Yes, sometimes they have the most benefits for a Saturday, or if you were going to do a Saturday anyway, you get a lot of things included that make it worth your while to go there versus another location or something else that draws you in for that Saturday. But if you genuinely do not care what day and you are just genuinely looking for the lowest price tag on your event, looking for a different day that isn't a Saturday, not letting them bully you into a certain day, time of year, whatever, obviously you have to work within what is offered by the business. So if they're only available during wedding peak season, for example, barn venues are a very big thing, especially in the Midwest right now, but a lot of them do not have heat or air conditioning. It's a thing that a lot of brides don't know until they start looking. So either A, you have this big, huge cost of having to purchase fans to go through the space in order to cool it down during the summer, or they're not open for a winter wedding because they have no insulation and no heating in their barn. Again, this is not everywhere. This is just a lot of places. So you have much more limited options. Or if you do have the option, there is an additional cost associated with it that, like you'd have to have heat everywhere, right? That in and of itself is going to be so expensive. And a lot of times barns aren't open. Yes, you can talk to a venue about, hey, if I'm doing in this off season when technically you're not open, is there a chance that I can book? I know that, you don't have heat, and you've explained that to me. If I were to purchase or rent some sort of like heat source, would I still be able to do it? Are there other issues with that? Obviously, those are always things you can ask, especially with the smaller businesses, because typically they are flexible. But obviously, if it's a no because this is our safety reason, or no because we're only licensed to be open XYZ days, they can't change that. Yeah. So again, take it all with a grain of salt. It's going to be different for everywhere. But those are just some things that you can do in order to either cheapen your venue or to give you more options in terms of having the month that you want, the day that you want, or the location that you want. Oftentimes, the next biggest compromise is catering. A lot of people think that, oh, food trucks are so cheap. Typically, food trucks in the Midwest, listen to me, unless you are going to be spending like $10,000 on your catering, unless you do a food truck, they are not cheaper. They are ridiculous costs. Not only do you have to pay for all of the food, typically at stadium pricing per guest and what they order, a lot of times with catering, like food trucks for weddings, they will give you like a price per person, and that's the meal that people get, and that's it. And you're paying still like per person or per plate. You also have to pay a fee for them to be there. It's the same as catering, just get the catering. The catering a lot of times is cheaper, okay? I cannot stress that enough. In other areas, it may be different, but especially in the Midwest, it is not any cheaper unless you're spending like 10 grand on your catering. 90% of the time when I've looked into a food truck for a bride, it has been twice as much, if not more than that, for them to get a food truck versus just traditional catering. And that's not even just like a buffet. And it ends up being cheaper for the plated dinner than the food truck 90% of the time. Again, that leaves 10%, which is, still a percentage. It's out there. I have never seen it. I've never ever seen it be cheaper. And 90% of the time, it's twice the price. So, food trucks are a big fat no. Unless you're going for the food truck aesthetic and you're willing to pay the food truck sticker price, it's not going to be any cheaper. Second thing, in terms of food that you can do to lower your costs. If you have someone you trust, a family member, a good friend, a coworker, if you have that person that you can trust, find somewhere that will make your food in a large enough quantity for your wedding, and then bring your food to your venue. Typically, you can either rent like, but again, buffet style, like catering, food warmers. That will significantly reduce your costs. Yes, it's still gonna, be a cost for food, but it'll typically save your cost. Now, the biggest issue that people will be like, well, I don't want to do that, is if they want a plated dinner, which totally makes sense, does not really work for a plated dinner style. Or if they want, like, if they're worried about their guests, like, they're like, I don't want any of my guests, regardless of whether they're a coworker or a family friend, whatever, I don't want any of them to have to do anything on my wedding day. I just want them to enjoy the day. That's totally great. Find yourself a planner or a coordinator, however they classify themselves, that is willing to pick up your food that day and drop it in your food warmers. It's much cheaper to hire your planner to do that than it ends up being for catering. Typically, not 100% of the time. Obviously, if you know people, have friends, whatever, that cost is going to vary greatly based on everyone you know. And that is the next big thing for the industry. Who do you know? Obviously, if you have very, very close family and friend, like my sister's a photographer, I would never ask her to photograph my wedding because I would want her to be in it. And some closer family members and friends do resent that. But we had a family friend who I probably would have invited to the wedding just as a guest that I asked to use his services. I didn't ask for free. I just asked if he would be our photographer. I did it primarily because he photographed my parents' wedding and I wanted the nostalgia involved in that because he also had worked with my wedding dress before. But the additional benefit was I got a very big discount for very, very professional pictures. If you know someone, family friend, distant friend, that kind of thing, where they're still willing to, like, oh yeah, I'll do it at a discount, obviously offer to pay them what they are worth. Don't ever insult anyone by asking them to pay less. Typically, those people will either offer you a discount or some sort of like, oh, I'll deliver it for free, or, those kinds of things that will offset your cost. That is huge. Again, not all the time, and again, I can't speak for everyone, but is very frequently the case. My final tip today has to do with flowers. If you'll notice, flowers were not in those top 3 costs, but it is up there. The reason that it's not in those top 3 costs that I listed out is because flowers can vary greatly. If you are doing any kind of live florals, there are very many options. Obviously, there's the traditional florist doing all your flowers in your arrangements, etc., etc. This is going to be your highest price tag, and I feel the most outrageous. Your next option is farmer's market or grocery store flowers that you turn into your own bouquets. You really don't have to have a ton of creativity at all to be able to do this. There's so many videos out there, and most bouquets are put together to coordinate as is. Typically, all you have to do with these arrangements is arrange them from what I call table bouquets to a bridal bouquet, which is basically tightening it up and using a singular type of filler flower to just fill in your dead space and pull the arrangement together to be more unique to you as a bride. But they're typically arranged pretty well, and you don't really have to do a ton with these except physically putting them together in their bridal bouquet. This can go for your bridesmaids as well, centerpieces, tables, whatever. The next option for live flowers is picking them and growing them yourself or at a close family member's house. If you know anyone who has the ability to do this, has a great garden, you can get your flowers from. Getting them from a friend, that offsets your cost. Usually it's minimal to zero cost, and then it's just the materials to put it together, which is super inexpensive. Now, if you are not absolutely set on, I have to have the aroma of real flowers, because people will know, they will not know. And if they know, it's because they came up and touched your bouquet. Or because your flowers look literally perfect and they don't have any imperfections. They will not know the difference between fake and real flowers. If you're like, well, they're going to know that they're not real, they're going to look really bad. Unless you're buying your flowers from the dollar store, they are not going to look bad. They are going to be fine. There are so many high-quality fake flowers nowadays for very inexpensive. For example, Amazon is my one-stop shop. Some people don't like this. Some people disagree. I have never been disappointed by the quality of the flowers that I receive. Silk fake flowers, especially roses from Amazon, are so high quality at this point. Okay, so essentially, you can get fake flowers from many locations. Craft stores, again, the dollar store does have them. I would not recommend the dollar store quality, but they do have them if you're really, really going for budget. Otherwise, Amazon has tons of options. I have not yet not been able to find a certain type of flower that I have been requested to look for. Silk fake flowers. Make sure you're looking at the silk ones because they are higher quality. They are more expensive that way, but that is going to give you the best quality flower, and you can keep them forever. You can reuse them. I have neutral flower fillers that I use, and I allow my brides to rent from me. So what happens is they pay for their certain colors. I have the quality of the other flowers. I put them together. I bring them to the wedding, and they rent the flowers from me. They don't have to worry about waste. Most of them wouldn't have kept their flowers anyway, so it doesn't really matter if they keep them or not. And I'm charging $200 plus the cost of materials versus a bill of $2,000, sometimes up to $4,000 or $5,000. On top of that, real flowers, fresh flowers, do have to be kept cold. the day before the wedding. To recap my chaotic points, number 1 tip to save money on your wedding. If you're a Midwest bride for this year or next year, based on current trends that I'm seeing in the wedding industry. Number 1, don't forget to ask your venue what options they have available for you. Whether that means being flexible and booking a Thursday, Sunday, or Friday date, or having the ability to come in the night before or stay until the day after without having to pay anything to be able to take care of your decorations. Always, always, always ask. Know that sometimes the answer is no, sometimes it's not available for you, but it will never hurt to ask. Tip number 2. Remember, food trucks are not going to be less expensive. And if you can find someone to bring in and watch over your catering that is not your caterer, most of the time is going to save you money. Tip number 3, photographer. Who do you know? Or can you book a special with your photographer? There's so many photographers out there. You can do it. You can find someone in your budget. I know you can. 4th tip, final tip, flowers are your next biggest cost, but they vary greatly. If you have your heart set on real flowers, search for alternatives, getting them or growing them yourselves from a friend or, again, your own garden. Or look to farmers markets and literal actual stores and put the bouquets, centerpieces, etc. together yourself. One word of warning, you do have to keep them cold, but if you are not totally 100% set on real flowers, get them fake from Amazon. They're delivered to your door. A multitude of more options. And if you have Amazon Prime and use it on a Prime item, if you hate the way the flowers look because you are not convinced, you can return them for free and get all of your money back. Anyway, if you are a bride and would like more tips, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell down below so you can get notifications for when more videos come out. And let me know in the comments what your top wedding question is for a Midwest wedding planner. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Love, Genevieve.